Hello, hello, hello! You get special glitter stitches and I get special glitter stitches and our projects get special glitter stitches today. I'm the Knitting Fairy Godmother. Why don't you go get your project and you can knit along while we talk today. I'm starting a Knitting Circle Society in January and I'm excited because every month has a theme. You'll get new information and new knitting stuff pre-recorded as like the learning part, and then every week we're going to have knit-alongs where you can bring your questions and I'll answer your questions in real time, and then we can meet each other, get support from each other, and then expand our knitting. If it's something that you're interested in, I would love for you to join us. It's really flexible because everything's virtual and online, which is the only option that we have to learn right now. And if you'd like to sign up, the sign up is on my website, knittingfairygodmother.com. And if you have any questions, definitely just shoot me a DM or email me. I'll be happy to talk about some specifics with you. So today we're starting a new feature called the Book Club, Virtual Book Club. We're going to go through Ellie Beck's book called Makers. It's Mindful Thoughts for Makers, Connecting Head, Heart, and Hands. And it's a small book. It's about the size of my hand. But she's got some really interesting ideas it's my jam. So I wanted to talk to you about it. So she starts the introduction on page 7, and the title is On Being a Maker. The author talks about how being a maker is an innate part of being human, and I think that that's true. I completely agree with that. She talks about how our ancestors were makers, but that our ancestors didn't have to really use that title or that term. That I think about our ancestors and the famous quote about invention is necessity is the mother of invention, right? That there's the little c, the lowercase c of being creative, and part of how we are creative is how we solve everyday problems. And sometimes we can do that with design, and then that's a really special crossroads at that point. The author talks about words like tinker, design, invent, create, play, explore, and make something. And I love all of those words too. When we use words like that, it takes some of the serious aspects, the idea that something has to be perfect, that we can just experiment and play and see what happens as we're making. To be human is to be a maker, and I couldn't agree more. I find that when I'm knitting, there are lots of experiences that I can have, that my senses expand as I bring my focus into what I'm working on. And maybe you've had that experience too. Maybe you do something else instead of knitting where you've had that experience. Some people call it flow, some people call it tapping in. There's lots of different words that have been used to describe that sense of bringing your focus in. Ellie Beck, the author, says that the quiet slowness of taking time to enjoy making. And that's something that I've been experimenting with personally over the past year, and certainly it's something that the pandemic and social isolation and social distancing has sort of forced on me in ways that I didn't have previous experience with before, because when I could go out of my house to meet with the groups of people that I meet with, then that's a very external making experience versus the internal experience of creating at home by myself in the quiet. And the process of making can guide us to slow down, which again, same. And listening to our minds and connect with the whispers in our hearts. I kind of want to get that on a plaque because that's how I have been able to experience knitting when I'm quiet, is that I can connect to the whispers in my heart, and how that is an enriching experience. And it's taken me a while to get to the point where I can call it that, right? Before it was just knitting, but now when I have this deliberate intention of slowing down, then that sort of like inherently makes the space to connect with the whispers in my heart. And part of that is being here on social media with you and being able to share the things that I am experiencing. Again, that external versus internal experience, and it's interesting, right? So the author goes on to say that she uses making as a tool for daily meditation and making for making's sake alone. So let's unpack that a little bit. Using making as a tool for daily meditation. So I have personally experimented and tried and experienced many different types of traditional styles of meditation, and I have to be completely transparent that none of them really have worked for me, even though I have given every single one the good college try. It's been too difficult. But I find when I have something to focus on, my knitting, it makes that space of meditation accessible to me. So having the repetition of the actions in my hands and my body helps me to access the flow and the quiet meditative space. And I think that's what the author is talking about. It took me a while to understand or experiment with my knitting in a meditative place. And maybe that's sort of the whole point, is that it's something I had never thought about combining the meditation and the knitting, and there had to be enough space within my daily experience to even try that out and see what happens. But because I did, I got really interesting results that, you know, I think I'm onto something, and it's something that I can get behind and keep trying. And then finally, making for making's sake alone. That is such an interesting idea, and the way that I'm working on that personally now is the idea of perfection and working with making mistakes. I can look at a project I'm working on and focus more on the time than the perfect result. And that has taken me, that's required some different thought patterns and some different intention. And I've had to look at my work from a different perspective in order to be able to, like, literally let go of not making a mistake. And I'm a really good knitter, so it's hard not to go back and rush to fix that mistake that I made. But for me, that's also part of the meditation and the idea of not attaching to the result. So making for making's sake. Of course, I'm really lucky because my knitting is also something that's functional, and I love wearing what I make. So that is some of the things that Ellie talks about in her book. mindful thoughts for makers, and that's some of my personal thoughts and ideas about what she wrote. So I hope you can join us next week when we talk about the next chapter. Keep knitting, everyone.